Thank you for joining us today for In Conversation. I'm Kestin Cornwall. I'm an assistant professor at OCAD University. I specialize in illustration and visual arts. I also work in graphic design and advertising.
My name is Natia Lemay. I am a cross-disciplinary artist, and you can find me at Natia Lemay Art on Instagram or natialemay.com.
Great. So first question that we have for you is program or programs. Have you taken at OCAD U? And what and how do they involve your practice, your personal work?
Okay. I actually had a wonderful experience at OCAD. My major is in drawing and painting. I minored in social sciences. Was on track to complete a printmaking minor as well, but of course the pandemic shut down studios. But I was lucky enough to be a professional note taker at OCAD. So I got to take about 3 extra classes a semester of different departments. So that's from illustration to graphic design and industrial design, Indigenous visual studies. So I learned a lot. I was really lucky. I learned a lot. But it all influences my practice because especially sociology and social sciences, because I really like working with allegory and human behavior and how history and biology created the society that we live in. So I try to implement those elements into the work that I make.
Interesting. All right. Very cool. Next question we'll move on to is, can you give those watching and listening a brief, informal description of your work and what inspires you? You gave a little bit of that earlier, but if you could continue with it, that'd be great.
Yeah. So as I said, I'm a cross-disciplinary artist. So I curate a lot. I love figure painting, mostly Black figures or mixed race figures because I'm Black and Indigenous, as well as French descent. I also love sculpture. My father was a soapstone sculptor, so I do a lot of work with like acrylic and stone. But I don't really have a specific medium because I don't think you can tell the complexities of the Black experience and the mixed race experience through one medium. But my process really is I experiment with materials, and then I have an idea. So I read constantly. So I'll have an idea and I'll be experimenting with materials, and then something will just connect. It'll be like, this material works perfect for that idea. I'm going to see if I can make it into something. And then we just go from there. I'm not a heavy prep person. Like a lot of people do studies. I'm not a fan of that because I can't stick with one thing. So I just experiment a lot and use the stuff that I'm reading, the information that I'm taking in to kind of influence the direction that I'm going. Yeah.
Speaking of your art, is that your art behind you?
Or? It is. Yeah. Yeah. That's one of them. Yeah.
Your work. Great answer. What interests you most about the field you're working in? So if you were to simplify what you're really focusing on, what interests you most about it?
Yeah. I think the power of art is what interests me the most, especially being able to create experiences, create visual representation, create emotion that can speak to things that a lot of us can relate to. I know as a kid, I often felt like I was unique in my experience. I grew up in Winnipeg. I was one of the only Black kids in my school. And I felt very dislocated from my community. So that really inspires me to make work that other people can see and understand that they're not alone. And I really try to steer away from the institution, making things that I think that they're going to like. Sometimes I just make things that I know they're not going to like just to kind of push the boundaries a little bit. But I think that's what's needed because we're often forced to fit inside of a box, right? And the Black experience is not a monolith, and it's very, very different. So yeah, my work definitely tries to, just highlight the complexities of what we go through. Yeah.
Great points. Going back to being the only kid and growing up where you grew up in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience. I found art helped me work through a lot of those like issues or to figure out how to build a community or find a tribe. I did it through my art. And did you find that you did that as well, or?
I'm working on it. I would say I growing up in Winnipeg, and my family is like our black side has been in Canada since the 1600s. So long time in Canada, but my grandmother's from the South, from Pensacola, Florida. So we're like Black American and like Black Canadian, like the whole traditional Great Migration and all that stuff. And in Winnipeg, the Black people are usually African. So I didn't really relate to them the same way because I didn't have the same cultural history as they did. And then even in Toronto, it's kind of the same thing because a lot of people are Jamaican or Bajan or Trini, and they have these like really strong like cultural ties to their homeland. And I don't have that. So I really, really went out of my way throughout my time at OCAD to start like Black art shows, I created a BIPOC collective, all kinds of things to kind of build that Black community and that tribe. And I think that at this point, I do have a good little collection of strong Black women and queer women that are willing to support me, and I support them the same way. But it's been a lot harder than I expected it to be. I think that this whole myth of Blackness in Toronto really makes it difficult for people like me to fit in some of those circles because I don't listen to soca and I don't listen to reggae and like those things that are typical Black things that a lot of people relate to in Toronto. I don't relate to because I grew up in a Native community. So yeah, it's a weird thing, being mixed race and having all those weird intersections. But luckily there are a few people that are really, really down for it. But at the same time, it's been a challenge, that's for sure.
Very, very interesting. Uh, could you describe your process, like how you work and how you a short like you have your work behind you, so if you have any other work you want to show, feel free. But really, this is more about the process. And you talked about it a little bit earlier as well. But if there's more in depth that you wanted to add,
Yeah.
yeah.
So my process is probably mostly books. That's most of my process. I read a lot of journal articles, a lot of science fiction, fantasy novels, Black authors, historical books, whether they're fiction or nonfiction. I really like over the past year, I probably read about 20 books just about the Black experience of Black migration and Indigenous laws in Canada. And when I read it and read things that I know are inaccurate, that's what inspires me. Because I'm like, that's not, that's not accurate. That's not how things happen. Even like in the news, when you see things that are inaccurate, you read and you're like, that's just so wrong. Like that's not how the world works. And that's what inspires me. That sparks the process. From that point, when I do my material exploration, I don't really have anything to show right now. As I mentioned, I'm packing to go to Connecticut. But when I experiment with materials, it's like an instant connection. So my thesis project was about Canadian history for Black and Indigenous people. And as I'm reading through these books, I'm thinking of history books. And then my material became a history book. And that was my medium that I created a performance and art pieces out of. But yeah, it's my process. It's really through, seeking out information and knowledge and then connecting dots. And that's why I think experimentation is so important. It's so important to try materials and have a collection of random objects because you never know when in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I have that piece of wood, or there's that piece of stone there, or that really cool color I haven't gotten to play with. And it makes me think of this chapter in this book that I just read. But yeah, that's how my process works. It's really random. But it works for me. So I'm not going to fix it if it's not broken.
For sure. Sounds almost like you're piecing a puzzle together.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that's where sociology comes back in and social sciences is that it is a puzzle. Like we don't have all the answers. We can assume we understand why people do the things that they do, why racism is so prevalent today, why Indigenous women are going missing. Like we know deep down, but there's no evidence. So it's really a puzzle to build a case to prove the point that we need to create systemic change, right? And that's kind of like the process as well. It's like you know it's there, you can feel that it's there, but how do we put it together in a puzzle to create a picture for people that don't understand the experience so they can also understand where we're coming from? So yeah, that's a good analogy. Puzzles.
Puzzles. Great points. Can you briefly describe your experience at OCAD U? It's an open-ended question.
Yeah. I had a fantastic experience. I was very, very lucky. It was difficult. I am a mom with 3 kids, a single mom with 3 kids. I worked multiple jobs on campus. A mature student, obviously. But I went in there with the goal to just do the best that I could do and try as many things as I could. And through that, I built an amazing community of artists that I talk to on a daily basis. I built great relationships with faculty members that now I'm putting on shows with them this summer. I got to work in health and wellness, so I got to meet tons of students and learn a lot there. I won the Equity and Diversity Award at OCAD last year, which was phenomenal. But yeah, my experience was wonderful. A lot of people have terrible things to say about their personal experiences, but like I think that most of the faculty just want you to learn. They just want you to do better and they want you to try. Like that's the bare minimum, is just trying and putting your all into something, because they are professional artists and they put their all into it. And when someone doesn't seem as if they're giving you, they're valuing your time, I can see how it can be frustrating for faculty members. So, but I understand the value of their knowledge and their experience, and I sucked up every little drip of knowledge they were willing to give me. So yeah, my experience was great.
That's wise advice for younger students. Good points.
Young students often message me asking me for tips at the beginning of the year. It actually turned into, I did a town hall at the beginning of this year for first years coming in with the chair for the Ada Slate chair for new students, because I kept getting Instagram messages for advice, and I'm like the mom for a lot of people. I don't know how it happened, but.
Now, what can people do to support your career? So what can we do to help?
Yeah, to support my career, I would say just show up. I think that's a big thing. Just show up, whether it be to an opening or like something on Instagram or watch a video, go to a talk, and just support each other. Like I think that is the most important thing, because we get to know each other through being present, and you just have to be present. It doesn't take money or connections or anything like that. It just takes that presence. So yeah, for me, I just want people to show up and support me. I support everyone as much as I can, and I hope that they are willing to do the same thing for me. Yeah.
Great. Hopefully the website that we're putting you on will help, and these videos will help direct people to your work. Before we end it, just so that people don't have to go back, if you could restate your name, contact info, and thank everyone.
Yeah. So my name is Natia Lemay. You can find me at Natia Lemay Art, or my website, www.natialemay.com. And thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Be sure to check out our next episode, blackocadu.ca. Let's go.